Could you deliver a fatal electric shock to a stranger just because someone told you to? Keep that question in your mind. Because by the end of this you may not like your own answer. What if someone told you that you are capable of killing an innocent person? Not because you are evil. Not because you are dangerous. But simply because someone in authority told you to. You would say no, right? But in 1961, an experiment proved that 65% of ordinary people, teachers, doctors, fathers, mothers, were willing to deliver a potentially fatal electric shock to a stranger. Just because someone in a white coat said, "Please continue. Stay till the end." Because what this experiment revealed about human nature will change the way you see yourself forever. A basement. A stranger strapped to a chair. And you, sitting in front of a machine with switches labeled from 15 volts all the way to 450 volts. The last switch just says, danger. Severe shock. Someone behind you says, "Please continue." What would you do? The year was 1961. In a courtroom in Jerusalem, Adolf Eichmann stood trial for his role in the Holocaust. He was not a screaming madman. He was a quiet, ordinary bureaucrat who said repeatedly, "I was just following orders." Hannah Arendt called this the banality of evil. Evil does not always come from monsters. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who stop thinking for themselves. Stanley Milgram asked one question: is this only possible in Germany? Or does this live inside all of us? He decided to find out. Could you deliver a fatal electric shock to a stranger just because someone told you to? Keep that question in your mind. Because by the end of this you may not like your own answer. Milgram invited ordinary people to join a memory study at Yale University. Each participant met another person they believed was also a random volunteer. That person was an actor. They drew lots. The draw was rigged. The real participant always became the teacher. The actor always became the learner. The learner was strapped to a chair in another room connected to electrodes. The teacher sat in front of a shock machine, 30 switches from 15 volts to 450 volts. The last two switches marked simply, XXX. If the learner answered wrong, deliver a shock. Wrong again, increase the voltage. The shocks were not real. But the teacher did not know that. Before running the experiment, Milgram asked psychiatrists to predict results. They said only 1 in 1,000, the most disturbed individuals, would go all the way to 450 volts. They were catastrophically wrong. At 75 volts, the learner grunted. At 120 volts, he complained of pain. At 150 volts, he demanded to be released. At 300 volts, he screamed and refused to answer. At 315 volts, silence. Dead silence. The teacher said, "I don't think I should continue." The experimenter calmly replied, "Please continue the experiment." No threats. No guns. No force. Just a calm voice in a white coat. 65% of participants pressed all the way to 450 volts. These were not monsters. These were everyday people, teachers, engineers, parents. Many trembled. Many begged to stop. But when the experimenter said continue, they continued. Why? Milgram called it the agentic state. When a person recognizes authority, their brain stops holding them responsible for their own actions. They transfer moral responsibility upward. I was just doing my job. It wasn't my decision. This happens in offices. In hospitals. In governments. Every single day. Milgram ran 18 variations of the experiment. When moved from Yale to a rundown office, obedience dropped. When the teacher saw the learner face to face, obedience dropped further. When two experimenters contradicted each other, obedience collapsed. When one participant refused and walked out, others followed. One person's courage gives others permission to be courageous too. In one variation, 2 actors refused midway and walked away. Obedience dropped from 65% to just 10%. Simply because 2 people said no. There is also moral disengagement, mental tricks our brain uses to justify harmful actions. Displacement of responsibility, the experimenter is in charge. If something goes wrong, it is his fault, not mine. Diffusion of responsibility, when everyone is responsible, no one feels responsible. Dehumanization, the less human the victim seems, the easier it is to hurt them. When the teacher could not see or hear the learner at all, obedience was at its highest. These mechanisms exist in every institution where ordinary people end up doing extraordinary harm. Loop, we started with one question. Could you press that button? After everything you have learned, do you still believe your answer is no? Milgram proved that almost all of us carry this capacity. Not because we are evil, but because we are wired to obey. Milgram died in 1984 at just 51. But his experiment has been replicated across Germany, Australia, Jordan, and America. And in almost every replication the results are the same. Across cultures. Across continents. Across generations. Human beings obey authority, even when it costs them their conscience. Question everything. Pause, even for one moment, before following an instruction that feels wrong. That one moment of pause is where your conscience lives. That one moment is the difference between the 65% and the 35%. The most dangerous words in any language. I was just following orders. Remember that basement. Remember those switches. Remember that 65% of ordinary people pressed all the way to the end. Then decide, which 35% do you want to belong to? Drop a comment. Could you have stopped? And tell me, which psychological experiment should I cover next? Because some of them are even darker than this one. Friends, I hope that you got a lot of information from this video. To watch more such interesting videos, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Also, click on the bell icon, which is present next to the subscription button, so that you can get the notification of all the new videos of this channel. Like and share the video. Take good care of yourself. Goodbye.